Welcome back to Racing Rundown, and we are returning for our Belmont Stakes recap video. And a very good result for us in the race. We did have the winner once again, and also we had a Racing Rundown exacta in this race, not in terms of me picking one horse and Eric picking the other one, but I said I was going to play the Pletcher exacta. I did not play the Pletcher exacta, but I said that was going to be the exacta on our Belmont Stakes preview, and fortunately that paid off. We'll have plenty to say about the top two from this race, but just overall, a really well-run Belmont Stakes. I have to say that it felt like, in hindsight, it feels like that this was a foregone conclusion, especially with Mo Donegal winning it, that this was going to be the result of it. But I felt like the two horses that ran 1-2 in this race were really, really good in here. And sometimes you get the Belmont, it's like some Belmonts are the best of the best finisher of a bad group of finishers. This was not the best two of a group of bad finishers. This was two horses that were in their element. And, unfortunately for Mo Donegal, he's not going to get to go a mile and a half again. But and I think a mile and a quarter is just fine for him. But he clearly loves his mile and a half distance. Nest saw it out great. And, just kind of the view from 38,000 feet in this race that's obviously what happened here. But sensational runs here. Before we get into anything else, we have to obviously give congratulations out there to Todd Pletcher and, the Donegal Racing people, Mike Rapoli, two groups that have been in horse racing for over a decade now, have tried for so long to win a Triple Crown race, and they get the job done here. And, of course, you saw the emotion that Mike Rapoli had after this race, someone who has been involved in racing for decades. And, he said that the Belmont, he kind of alluded that the Belmont meant more to him even than the Kentucky Derby. And I think, given when you think about where Mike Rapoli came from, as much as I'm sure he would love to win the Kentucky Derby, I'm sure that he is as happy, if not more happy, winning the Belmont Stakes than he would be winning the Kentucky Derby. And we'll get into everything there. That was kind of my view from 38,000 feet. I'll turn it over to Eric, the guy who has been on Mo Donegal since just about day one. So, just everything that we've seen about this horse. He was a maiden watch horse. You loved him in the Remsen. You loved him in every race except for the Holy Bull all year. He's your horse. Let's go with him.
I'm really excited about this. Obviously, literally for months, you can go back and I think Jack said even he'll find some clips to just the repetitiveness of me saying Mo Donegal just needs to get to the Belmont. Anything else is there. The Derby, that's not even the priority, I don't think, with him. It should be winning this race, and he came out and showed it. This was a huge, huge performance. Race that was made for him. He's worked very hard to get to this point, and it was so obvious throughout his progression that the Belmont was going to be the race for him, and it paid off in a big way. Great to see Todd Pletcher get his fourth Belmont Stakes win, a guy who deserves it so much for all he has done at Belmont Park and in New York racing. Irad Ortiz getting another Belmont win, also huge, and obviously great to see Mike Rapoli and all the Donegal racing partners get their first win in the Belmont Stakes. Mike Rapoli, more than anybody, probably deserves to win the Belmont Stakes, given his deep roots in New York as well, and all he's done for horse racing over the past decade and a half. Just another feel-good story along this Triple Crown trail. It's been great to see all three races won by deserving connections, deserving jocks, trainers, owners, horses as well, more than anything. Just a fun Triple Crown, in my opinion, even though there was a lot of controversy behind it all. It was great to see it capped off with this big win by Mo Donegal, and also to see Nest run second for the similar connections. And just a very well-run race, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll get into the running of the race, and really, you saw the change in tactics, slightly change in tactics for Mo Donegal here. And I think you said it in the preview, Eric, that Mo Donegal was going to have to sit forward in this race, but he was able to do that. He didn't need to be a dead closer in here, and you saw that. He was toward the back of the end in the earlier part of the race, but really when you got towards the middle point of the race, Irad Ortiz got him into the position off the turn. He was in a really good position to pounce on We the People. We the People was always going to come back to them. We'll get to his run in just a few minutes, but he was in the perfect position off the turn, and he won with so much in the tank. He won the race by 3 lengths. It was really a foregone conclusion as they turned for home. And Nest for a slight moment looked like she was going to maybe stretch on and win this race, but she was clearly second best here, and we'll get to what that means for her and her career. But just in general, I mean, I'll let you say whatever there is left to be said about just the trip that Mo Donegal got, the ride and everything. But, he was ridden correctly. A horse who, in a lot of instances, would be a deep closer. This is how you take a closer and win the Belmont with them, at least in my opinion. And props to Irad Ortiz for doing things the right way. I've given him plenty of grief, and I think rightfully so, for the ride that he put on this horse in the Kentucky Derby. I did have some kind of wise guy line of, there's only 8 horses in this race, so it's not going to be very hard to screw it up. But I am very much criticize them when they do wrong and give them the praise when they're good when I analyze these races. And give him the credit for this, because he rode Mo Donegal how you ride a closer in the Belmont Stakes.
Exactly. It was a perfect ride, I thought. He made all the right moves, rode him confidently, made the moves when necessary, and then, of course, drew off. And another thing I thought that was really impressive about just Mo Donegal in general, this was the first time he didn't need a target to win the race. And that's, I don't think that's ever necessarily needed to be the case, but you think about all of his wins, the Remsen, the Wood, even his maiden win, he was really figuring things out late in the game. And this was the first time he was able to put horses away early on in the stretch and then just finish off the job confidently. That was a huge takeaway, and I think that's going to bode him well going forward. And especially for people that are looking at these races, just knowing, he doesn't need to make it a last-second desperation heave at the horse in front of him. No, he can draw off and win convincingly, and that's what he did. It was no doubt, really, from the quarter pole on. Going into Nest, I thought that she ran huge. Her start was atrocious. I guess fillies in the Belmont just hate breaking with the field, but point being, she still ran massive. It's a shame that she did get stuck against her stablemate, because I think in another year where there was a horse so primed and perfect for the Belmont Stakes, she very well could have been the winner. But it was still a huge performance, and I think there's so many good races out there for her to try and tackle from this point on. Just all the respect in the world for Nest with what she's done already throughout this year and what I expect her to do up until this fall.
And now we're going to move on to what I have to say about Nest, and I'm going to harken back to the video that I made about Nest 3 weeks ago. I think I made it on the Tuesday after the Preakness, and we didn't know whether or not Nest was going to be running in the Belmont Stakes at that point. Obviously she ended up running there, but I made the video and I laid out to you exactly why she was going to run well in the race, and I said there she was going to finish in the money. She ended up running second here, and I did pick her second in the Racing Rundown preview behind her stablemate Mo Donegal, but she sat that inside stalking trip, and I think my quote was that inside stalking trip that has produced countless Belmont winners. And she wasn't the Belmont winner here, but she was damn near close to being the Belmont winner. It was a sensational run for her. Have to chuckle at the point that Eric made about fillies not wanting to break in the Belmont. The one takeaway, and this is a complete aside, that I also had from Nest's runner-up effort here is Rags to Riches was definitely otherworldly. I mean, it's such a shame that we didn't get to see a full career from Rags to Riches, because, if Nest is as good as I think she is, and I think Nest is definitely the goods when it comes to 3-year-old fillies, Rags to Riches had to be absolutely otherworldly to be able to do what she did in her Belmont Stakes. So just had to throw in the subtle Rags to Riches praise there. But for Nest, talking about horses that are actually active, she sat the inside stalking trip. She showed that tactical early speed, which you need to have if you're going to run well in the Belmont Stakes, and she's going to win the Alabama. I think most people are going to look at her after this race and say that, even those folks who would potentially back Secret Oath in a Coaching Club American Oaks. I think it just makes sense for her. I don't want to see her not run against the boys at one point in the rest of her career. I worded that really, really badly, so I apologize. I'm going to reword that. She needs to run against the boys before her career is over again, and I hope that it's not over after the end of this year. Malathot came back, so that certainly it could be a possibility for her, and obviously different connections for Nest, but I would hope that we see another year out of her. But if she's a 4-year-old, run her against the boys at some point. And also, I really hope it doesn't take a decade for another filly to run in the Belmont Stakes. And it doesn't have to happen every year. You're not going to have the horse every year. That's certainly something that needs to be acknowledged. But when you get fillies like Nest, when you get fillies like Malathot could have run in the Belmont Stakes last year if she had been she could have run in the Belmont Stakes anyway, and she could have placed like her stablemate Nest did if there had not been a freak like Essential Quality in there. So there are years where it's with the right horse and the right group of horses that you're running up against, where you can run fillies in the Belmont. And the ones that are bred to get the distance, I laid out the data for you, and Nest flattered that, made that point. You basically put it in cast iron that the fillies that are bred to get the Belmont run well. The ones that are not bred to get the Belmont do not run well. We've now had 7 run, 4 have hit the board, 3 have not hit the board. All 4 that hit the board were bred to get that distance, and just really hammering that point home. We'll move on to a couple of the horses underneath. We'll talk about We the People. I'll let Eric get into him. Good run underneath from Skippy Longstocking. I knew there was going to be someone. Two things that I knew there was going to be someone to do. I knew that, it kind of felt going into this race that there was the clear top 4 and then everybody else. I always had the feeling one of those everybody else horses is going to hit the board in here. I tried to make a creative minister. It wound up being Skippy Longstocking. That run kind of came from nowhere, especially the fact that he was involved early. But, credit to Manny Franco for putting him in the race early and being in that position he was never going to win the race. But to last out there, end up getting third when We the People eventually tired. And, good run from him. Obviously, We the People. Eric laid out the pedigree point perfectly. And I'll turn it over to you for what you have to say about We the People. I think he's still a horse for the summer, absolutely a potential Travers horse. I think 1.25 miles is upper limit, but I think he can do 1.25 miles, certainly 1.125 miles, no problem for him. But just the Belmont was not enough for him. It was too much for him.
Exactly. And heading into, he ran the exact race I thought he was going to run. Make the lead, get away with pretty good fractions, but ultimately that final quarter mile will be his undoing. And that's exactly what it was. He was game. He showed some fight despite being passed, but the Belmont is all about pedigree, and we've learned that. You look at the winners of this race in history, there are very few horses who you look at and you wonder, how did this horse get that distance? And even, you just go through the last 6-7 years, Creator, perfectly bred for the Belmont. I think that's probably like the one of the best examples out there. Or even if we're going to even crazier long shots, Sir Winston. He's not the greatest racehorse in the world, but purely on pedigree, he is meant to run 1.5 miles, and therefore he was able to win the Belmont Stakes. And obviously, you look at the last year's Essential Quality. He was along the same lines as Mo Donegal, where he was always going to find himself running his best race at 1.5 miles in the Belmont Stakes. And that also hurts the horses that aren't bred for it, and that is We the People. He is perfect for 1.25 miles, 1.125 miles, probably the sweetest spot. But when you get further than that, the questions will come around no matter how the race sets up, and that's exactly what we saw here. But I totally think he's a horse for Haskell, Jim Dandy, Travers, so on and so forth. He's going to be an excellent horse throughout the rest of the year, probably into a 4-year-old campaign unless he turns into a super horse and goes off and gets a great stud deal in the next few months. Point being, he is really talented. Just the Belmont was not the race for him, but I could easily see some of these major 3-year-old summer races being that race for him.
And now we'll move on to the Derby winner, Rich Strike. Just kind of, I know that, there was the camp of people that really thought that he could run well in the Belmont, especially, the workout people. I'm not going to get into, what we think about the workout angle here. And then, there were the people who said, oh, no chance. And then, I think we kind of fell in the middle on Rich Strike in that, we didn't think that he had no chance, but he was always going to be up against it going into this race. And I think, maybe he could have run a little bit better. He was ranked early in the race. He clearly needs a pace to run into. And I think Jay Priven made the point perfectly on Racing Rundown when we talked to him last Tuesday, and he said that 98% of Rich Strike's win in the Kentucky Derby came from the pace falling apart there. He did need to be good enough on the day to win the Kentucky Derby, and that's what makes him a contender. And he's not an absolute, I think, 100% fluke from the Derby, but he is going to need paces to run into in subsequent races. And when he's not going to get that, you're going to get runs like this. And in a race where We the People was going to lope along, it just makes sense that a dead closer like Rich Strike, who doesn't have the speed to be forwardly placed early, I think maybe Sonny Leone could have put him a little bit more forwardly placed early, but at the end of the day, what was that going to do for Rich Strike? And I think that maybe he finishes 5th ahead of Creative Minister, but he was up against it here, and the Derby was a once in a million thing, and maybe it happens again. Maybe he improves mightily. Maybe it's kind of difficult to see that happening, but he could improve mightily and take out one of these summer races. But I think that, he's a horse that could win some graded stakes races, but the Belmont certainly proved that he needs to set up.
Absolutely, and that was kind of the thought process heading into the race, but coming out of it, proving to be the situation there. And another thing was Rich Strike and Sonny Leon were fighting each other the entire race. You can see on the blimp camera, Rich Strike's trying to get in, and Eric Reed, the trainer, came out and said, "I told Sonny to stay off the rail. I didn't want to be there." And so Sonny Leon was just following orders. He was trying to keep Rich Strike off the inside, but Rich Strike, you can see him lugging his head to the left. He wanted to be down on the pine, and it just wasn't working out for him. So, and it just wasn't his day, plain and simple. Without a pace in front of him, he's already at a disadvantage with his deep closing style. He's not versatile in that sense. And then, of course, when the horse and the rider aren't getting along for parts of the race, that's going to put you in a worse position. I thought he could have ran a little better than this, but once again, it just did not end up being his day. And going forward from here, he needs the setup. We know that. We know that was why he won the Kentucky Derby. And going forward, that's still going to be the case. But that could still happen. I mean, as we're forecasting far into the future for the Travers, and we might have a early voting, We the People, maybe a Jack Christopher, all these speed types. Well, that's plenty enough for Rich Strike to come and get at least a piece of it. So Rich Strike's not a bad horse. You can't win the Kentucky Derby if you're a bad horse, but he does need things to go a certain way for him to be at his best. And more often than not, I don't think that'll be the case, and that showed through here in the Belmont.
And now we've got three more horses to touch on. I mean, I don't really have anything to say on Barber Road and Golden Glider. They ran like Barber Road and Golden Glider were going to run. I do want to say I thought Creative Minister ran okay. I feel like this might have been a bit too much too soon for him. He's a horse that I like potentially for some races in the summer. We'll see what he runs, and I think the Curlin Stakes is certainly something. We haven't talked about this yet, but before the end of the week, I am going to have some kind of a video forecasting what the potential rest of the year for the 3-year-olds could look like. And I'm going to talk a lot about that Curlin Stakes. Creative Minister is one of many that I think could end up there. I think he's good to a certain level. This was just a bit too much too soon for him. I did think one positive thing is Rich Strike was next to him throughout most of the stretch, and he did not let Rich Strike by him. Be that whatever it may, the difference was 5th or 6th place in there, so wouldn't have been a whole lot on the resume one way or another, but the small little bit of positivity for Creative Minister out of the race. And then obviously the last two in the race, they were realistically fillers in this race. Barber Road just further emphasizes how bad the Arkansas Road at the Kentucky Derby Trail was. And did anybody actually talk about Golden Glider all week? I know we barely mentioned him, and I didn't really see anybody else talk about him. Definition of a filler horse in a Triple Crown race.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked about Skippy Longstocking at all, so I will say very impressed with how game he was. I know he was beaten over 6 lengths, but that was still a huge effort from him. Not sure what he'll factor in the rest of the year, but just I want to give credit to a horse I haven't given any credit to throughout this Triple Crown trail. I've given him very little respect, so the fact he was able to put in this third was very impressive. Creative Minister, just too much too soon for sure. 3 races in 5 weeks isn't impossible. Yeah, at least in my eyes, I know other people might disagree, but I think it's actually beneficial for some horses. But Creative Minister, that just to be doing what he's done in such a short amount of time, it was expected for him to not run the best here. And then Barber Road, this was never his race. Golden Glider, I forgot he was there half the time, and that's really all I have to say about that.
And with that being mentioned, that's it for our Belmont Stakes recap. And as I said, we're going to have that forecasting the landscape of the potential 3-year-old race, or the 3-year-old races for the rest of the year and how those could potentially shake out. We will have Jay Pridman. He will join us. Since we didn't get to have him in the Kentucky Derby, we haven't gotten a chance to talk to him about the epicenters, the Zandons, the pre-race hype horses for the Kentucky Derby. We're going to have him for just kind of a general look at the 3-year-old, debrief of the 3-year-old crop post the Triple Crown, and then moving on into potential races in the summer. So that will be probably a couple weeks from now, definitely before Haskell, Jim Dandy stuff, but a couple weeks from now. With that being said, be sure to check out our stuff that we're going to have this week on Racing Rundown for Royal Ascot. We'll probably be looking at day 3, day 4 stuff on YouTube, but episode 163 did have day 1 and day 2, as well as our Belmont Stakes recap. So we will see you for all that. Have a good one, and Mo Donegal, got to respect him with everything going forward now. And certainly, I'll end this with one thing. The phrase with Mo Donegal that I've been repeating ever since the Wood Memorial is faith